Hello and welcome to a Tolbert music tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about the trumpet, everything that you need to know as a new beginner or the parent of a new beginner on this instrument. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that I have moved to the floor. It's really important that you open the case of this instrument on the floor. I see a lot of students trying to prop it up in their laps while they're sitting in a chair to open it, and then it's going to fall out and it's going to get very badly dented. It is a disaster waiting to happen to open this up anywhere but the floor. I don't open my horns anywhere but the floor. The only instruments that ever becomes appropriate with are flutes and clarinets, maybe. But even then, I see most of my professional friends opening their instruments on the floor to be safe. This is an old trumpet that was donated to me, but it's going to work just like the ones that you are getting in our rental programs. Let me face it towards you so you can see what's going on. With this particular instrument, it's a little misleading how it's going to open right side up. It has a logo on both sides. Oftentimes there's only a logo on one side, and you want the logo facing up. Another hint can be the orientation of the buckles, although on this one the buckles are facing down, and usually the more rounded part of the buckle over here will be facing up. Another hint is the thicker half of the case will be on the bottom. If you open it up upside down, it's just not the end of the world. That is yet another reason why opening it on the floor is a good idea. You will learn how your case works. In some rare cases, you might even have a case that zips. I can't be able to show you how every possible case could work, but just be careful while you're trying to open them and try to learn what the correct orientation is so that you will always, at least after the first time, open it right side up. Okay, pretty simple. Undo buckles and open it on up. In many cases, you are going to find that the mouthpiece that is in your case is wrapped in plastic. You can unwrap that plastic and throw it away. It's trash. You don't need it anymore. There should be a nice shiny trumpet sitting in your case, and you may see a small handful of other accessories as well, including this stuff, which we're going to go over in a bit. Let's talk about taking it out and putting it together. It's really simple. Just be careful as you're taking it out. Use two hands all the time. And what we're going to do is get to an orientation where we can set it on our leg like this while still holding on with a hand, or maybe on the floor very gently like this while still holding on to it with one of our hands. We always want to be holding on to it. I see a lot of trumpet players think that it's clever and fun to try to balance the instrument like this at the beginning. You can see it's wobbly. It would take nothing more than a stiff breeze to send this thing completely all the way over. Complete and total disaster. You do not want that to happen. Okay, the only thing that you have to do to put the trumpet together is take out the mouthpiece and get it into the instrument. Let me show you about that because it might not work exactly the way that you think it would. Yes, we are just going to drop it in and let gravity do most of the work. But if we leave it like that, it's too prone to fall out. Here's what most people do to try to solve that at the beginning, is they bop on the top of the mouthpiece like this. This is a major no-no, major no-no. Never bop on the mouthpiece to make that little sound. Don't do it. I did it twice for you, and I'm not going to do it again. It is just so easy to put too much pressure on it and then to get the mouthpiece stuck and lodged in here. And that can cause permanent damage to the mouthpiece. It can cause permanent damage to the lead pipe. Do not do it, and do not let your student do it. The way that you secure it in place is actually to apply some downward pressure and twist. It's not very much pressure, it's not very much twisting. Watch carefully while I do it. That's it. I pushed down and I twisted just the tiniest little bit. It wasn't a quarter of a turn, it wasn't an eighth of a turn. It's just enough you can kind of feel it locking into place. And now, after I pushed and twisted like that, it's like the sword in the stone. Hercules could come by and yank on this thing straight, and it's never going to come out. The way that you get it back out is by twisting in the opposite direction and pulling. That little tiny twist just locks the metal together in there in a way that it's totally secure. It's totally secure. And so when we pull back out like this, that's how the mouthpiece is going to get put in and taken out. We do not want bopping. Okay, now that we have the instrument put together, I'm going to show you how to hold on to it and make the first sounds. I swapped over to my professional horn. This is my main instrument, and so since I'm going to be playing it a little bit for you, I'm going to go ahead and use mine rather than that old beater. The case that I put this one in is a little bit different from what you're likely to encounter with your students, and the one that I showed you there is a lot more likely to be what you're going to encounter. So, okay, the way that you hold on to the trumpet in rest position is either just on your lap or propped up like this is fine. And then when it comes time to play, we're going to begin with the left hand. The left hand is what holds on to the trumpet. And the thumb goes in this one here. And then you have to pick either your middle or your ring finger to go into this right here. Most trumpet players pick their ring finger. This is the most common way to do it. I personally pick middle finger. The trumpet that I learned on was an old one, and the ring was below, and it was stiff, and I had to use my strongest finger to get it to move at all. You will eventually need to be able to move this guy around. At the beginning, we're not going to worry too much about it, but you need to pick a finger to go into this ring right here. Grab this other trumpet here to show you that this ring is often adjustable on student trumpets. You take this right here as a screw, and lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, and then you can make this further away or closer to you. For our young, small students, it's almost always going to want to be adjusted so that it is quite close to the valves like this. You want it closer to where your finger is going to be so that the finger can go in like this comfortably and not have to go in all the way out over here. Their hands are going to end up being smaller than mine. Okay, so you have an adjustable ring. You're as the parent, you're going to want to be the one to turn this screw down because they come loose all the time, and then the rings pop out. It can be a real pain. Okay, but they do make it adjustable for young students. All right, so the left hand is what holds onto the horn. We get the thumb, finger in the hole. Here it is from the other side. That's what holds the trumpet in place. The right hand, I like to put my thumb right here between the first and second valves, like this. This is the most comfortable place for me to rest my thumb. The fingers are assigned 1, 2, 3, like this. And the pinky can just rest on top of this guy right here. It can rest inside it too. The ideal posture is to have it right here, because that way you won't be pulling the instrument into your face in order to play. And so it tends to be better to have it on top like this. Okay? All right, let's talk about basic sound production. In order to produce sound on the trumpet, you have to make a buzz with your lips. It has to be pretty focused and pretty small in the middle of your face. That buzz has to go inside the mouthpiece of the trumpet. And so you want a little hole, a little tiny thing going. You gotta kind of like make your lips so that they're not going. This version of it won't work. Actually doesn't tend to be one of our most common problems at the beginning, but you will see some students try it. The most common problem we get is them trying to put their mouth all the way over the mouthpiece like this. Can't make sound like that. Your lips stay together like you're saying, Mouthpiece goes over the top of the lips, and you buzz into the horn. Sometimes it helps to buzz outside. Sometimes it helps to use only the mouthpiece itself. Remember, twist and push, not bop. Usually I find that students are fine making sound on just the trumpet. Don't worry about the whole extra buzzing stuff too much. If you're really struggling to make sound, maybe see if it does help, but I wouldn't go there first. I wouldn't feel like you need to walk through those phases. Just let them give it a shot and let them give it many shots before you worry about trying to error correct or anything. It's pretty normal to just have to take a lot of tries to get it right. So it goes over your lips, and you buzz into the instrument. The way that you form your face to play this instrument is called embouchure. It's not a complicated embouchure. You just, like you're saying, there's no rocket science involved with it. It's very easy to overthink it. You might try at the very beginning with experimenting with moving it around a little this way or a little that way, or a little up or down, try to get it even across the two lips. everybody ends up settling somewhere else that's comfortable for them. And once you've been playing a long time, like myself, you'll see that if I move my embouchure, this is where I play. Same exact spot every time. If I try to move it over, I can barely play. It sounds radically different, and I can barely play the instrument at all from that point, from that posture. So, or from that embouchure rather. So you find what's comfortable for you, and that's how you make your buzz. If your student is struggling to get this right, you can use a mirror or a selfie cam, in order to have them see what's going on. Ideally, they're going to have picked it because they were able to make good sounds on it, and I'll be able to help them out with it a little bit in class as well. But it is one of the tougher ones to teach because everything that's happening is happening inside the mouthpiece. We can't show it. We can't cross-section the trumpet in your face in order to be able to show what's going on. You just got to try it enough times that you really get the feel for it. Now, once you're that far, and that step can be very hard, let me forewarn you that making that basic sound can take a week or two to even just get it relatively consistent. But what we want to hear is a nice consistent sound coming out. I see a lot of kids going, and they're not trying to go and hold it out for any amount of time. You got to get them blowing through and seeing if things stabilize a little bit. Okay. Once we start getting that, then we'll start worrying about which buttons we're supposed to push down and when. The very first note that we teach in most of our classes is D. This is the note that we're teaching first in most of our symphonic classes. If you're at Basilica of St. Mary and you're in our band-only program, they'll start on a different note, but that's all right. It'll be obvious which note that's supposed to be for them. So we start them on D. And that's the note that we want to be hearing. Here's where it gets really challenging with the trumpet. When you're trying to play the right note, you can be playing lots of different notes when you're pushing down these buttons. Any of those things and more can come out when you're pushing these two buttons down. And so it can be very, very frustrating to figure out and know which one you're on. This is where learning in a group is actually really, really beneficial for brass players. And this is where combining them with woodwinds and combining them with strings makes a big difference. And it's why I like to play piano when I have my students playing, so that they can have a reference point and know that their note is supposed to is correct and is fitting with what's going on. So when you're at home on your own, you might not have a way of being sure, and if you don't worry about it. If you have a piano, then the note is called concert C. If you know how to play a C, that's the first note that we're teaching the students in most of our classes, and you could cross-check it with the piano. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean that, oh no, it's going to be harder for your student. They're going to get this figured out really, really quickly. You just memorize how it feels. This feels really different from each one of them feels quite a bit different. What I'm doing is I'm tightening my lips together as I go up higher, and I'm loosening them open as I go lower. And it really does not take that long practicing these notes to start to understand and memorize what they're supposed to feel like from muscle memory. It will never go away that you play the wrong note. It's just the way brass instruments work. You'll be trying to play that one, and it'll come out and feel something like it's not quite right. Don't be frustrated when that's happening. It's very normal. Even professionals are cracking notes like that from time to time. And it's just part of the way that the instruments work. It's like, not every basketball player shoots it in the hoop every single time they shoot. It's just not how it works. And so that's probably one of the bigger difficulties. It's not the literal sound production itself. It's the getting it to the right note, getting it to the right location on the horn. Here we are playing the correct note on the instrument. So that's the first note that we're teaching, and if you've got a way to check it, great, and if not, then don't sweat it. That's one of the biggest things we're working on with these students in class. The next note that we teach is E. And for consistency across these videos, the third note that we're teaching is F sharp, or concert C, D, and E. If that means anything to you, if you're not a musician and you're like, why is he saying different notes? Don't worry about it. We're teaching the kids by rote anyways. I'm probably going to teach it to them as do, re, mi in their first several weeks of classes, and then we'll get the book out and then we'll look at it on the page and say that one's called this, and we'll write it in. It'll be a lot easier for them to not so worried about them learning note names right now as I am them being able to make consistent sounds at the beginning. Once they have that, it's like when you first learn to dribble the ball, and now look up at the same time you can dribble the ball and look around to see who's open, and and really assess the court or the field or whatever it is that you're doing in order to be able to see how you fit into it. And it's the same thing with it's the same exact thing with these instruments. Once the students can get those basic sounds out, now they're going to be able to listen to the rest of the group and assess, oh, am I playing the right note? And that's where we're going to be able to solve that problem with the trumpet. Okay, so that's really it for the basic sound production and the basic notes. However, there is a lot more to talk about in terms of short, mid, and long-term maintenance with your trumpet. It is a little bit more high maintenance than some of the other instruments are, and I want to walk you through how to make sure that it's well protected so it doesn't fall apart over the course of the first year or two of owning the thing. The first thing that we need The first thing that we need to talk about is oiling the valves. These valves right here are made of metal. The outside of the valve is made of metal and the inside is made of metal. You got metal scraping against metal. It must be lubricated with oil or you will destroy the instrument. If you are running these things too dry, then every time they go up and down, they're gonna scrape against the inside of this, and you're gonna get permanent scratches in there, and they're gonna run a lot slower. Okay, so you have to make sure that you're oiling the valves. I would recommend doing it about once a week. If you're practicing enough, probably once a week is around the correct amount. When I'm in a concert season, I'm oiling my valves a little bit more frequently from that. When I'm in a lazy season, lazy vacation season, I'm oiling them a little less frequently than that. If you have forgotten for a month, don't panic. If you've forgotten for 2 months, don't panic. There's a good chance that I did it for them in school. I come around and push buttons real quick and I grab a trumpet and I'm doing it while I'm teaching class. So there's a decent chance that I caught it at some point, and I've had students forget for a really long time, and it doesn't mean that the horn is destroyed. Okay, I say that to caution you and make sure that we don't get there. But if you've forgotten for a long time, please don't panic. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Okay, so let me show you the best way to do it. A lot of teachers are going to tell you to put the valve oil in these holes on the bottom of the valve. There's a lot of reasons not to do that. First of all, let's take a look at the shape. If we take a look inside, you're going to see that this valve has a ridge on it. When you dump the oil in, it's going to collect in this well on the bottom. It's going to go into that hole on the bottom, and it's not really going to get around. Where it needs to be lubricated is on the walls between the valve and the valve casing. It needs to be on the wall of that valve the whole way around. You can see that I have it well oiled because little beads of it have condensed together along the walls of my valve. All right. Fortunately, in this case, I don't think it's grime. It's actually just a well-oiled valve. Okay. This is the part, this silver part right here is the part that's going to be basically rubbing up against the inside of this cylinder here. And so you want oil between those. When you dump it on the bottom, it's just going to kind of collect on the bottom here and not really get anywhere that you want to. And then it's going to come back out the hole on the bottom, and it's going to stain and destroy your pants. I can't tell you how many pairs of pants I've lost to trumpet valve oil over the years, because this stuff, it can stain. It can be hard to get out. So really, what I like to do, I always do all three valves. If one of the valves is a little sticky, if one of them is going a little slow, I'm just going to do all three anyways, because the other two are going to get sticky any second now anyways. Okay. What I like to do is I like to unscrew them all from this joint right here. Okay. I'll zoom it out and zoom it in so that you see from that broader perspective what I'm talking about. These all screw and unscrew. And once you have it unscrewed, you could actually remove the valve entirely. I'm not going to use an entirely removed valve. I am going to remove it until I have revealed the silver portion of the valve that I was talking about before that's actually going to ride against the inside of the valve. This silver portion is now showing. So the way that I like to do this is I'll set it on a flat surface like a table or the floor, whatever I've got available to me. Floor is actually a really good idea because then it can't fall off, just like when we're talking about opening the case. And also, for what it's worth, this stuff, again, it can stain pants. So like if you're doing it on your lap, there's a good chance you're going to stain them. And so doing it on the floor or a table is a really, really good idea so that anything that could drip down is dripping down onto the table. What I like to do is I like to take the tip of the valve oil, touch it directly to the silver part here, and you can already see a little bit of oil dripping down. I'm not squeezing, I'm literally just tapping it on there, and a little bit of oil is coming out, okay? And that's probably enough for my horn. I oil it regularly, so it doesn't probably need more than that right now. I'm gonna give this one a light squeeze, and I'm making sure not to go over the hole. If I go over the hole here, it's just kind of going into nowhere. I'm making sure to stay touching on the silver, but it's actually okay if you'll actually see the oil just drip around the edge of the hole there. The static electricity keeps it on there and keeps it from like jumping down into the hole. And same thing on that one. And you should definitely not have used enough valve oil to be able to tell that that you just used some. It's still pretty much all the way full. Even if you're oiling your valves, gosh, twice, 3 times a week, even more than that, you shouldn't run out of one of these in an entire year. Okay, if you're going through it that fast, you're using way too much, and I see that happen all the time. Good news, this stuff is dirt cheap. You're not wasting money if you've used a little bit too much of it, and I'd rather you be using too much than not enough. But just something to be aware of. You don't need to be in there going and squirting on huge amounts. Okay. Now pay careful attention to this part because this is where it gets complicated and where it's very difficult for students to get it right. These holes, when they are inside the valve casing, are going to line up with these tubes that you see around the trumpet. Okay, they have to go in the correct orientation. If this valve doesn't go in facing the right way, then the holes don't line up with the tubes and you can't play. You can literally not even get air to go through the horn. You'll be blowing and there's nothing will come through at all. So if you look really carefully, it has a number 3 on it. It's easier to see in person. I've got it nice and close so that you can focus in on it. But the number 3 that's on this valve is going to end up facing the mouthpiece. Okay, so the 3 is over here on this part of the valve, and I'm putting it in basically facing the front. Now, once it's in there, you can't know, right, that the 3 is facing the right way. So what you do to get it the rest of the way there is you're going to twist in a clockwise direction until you hear that little click. Listen again. And what's happening is when you hear that click, this little plastic notch right here is clicking into, there's a slot in here that it's supposed to click into that makes it so that it can't spin anymore. So it can spin clockwise indefinitely until I get it down in there. And now I can't spin it anymore. It won't go back and forth. It's locked in this position where that plastic rider has now found the slot down there. So twist until it clicks and then it can't be turned anymore. Twist until it clicks and then it can't be turned anymore. And now your valves are in good shape. They're in the correct spot. So before I go any further and tighten these down, I'm actually going to double check that sound can come out. If the valve was not oriented properly, I literally can't get air into the trumpet at all. It might also be going weird, and you're like, that doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right. Because it wasn't oriented in the correct spot. You basically plugged the instrument from being able to let air pass through correctly. And once it's twisted into the correct orientation, then you are ready to tighten these down. And they just hand tighten. Hand tighten on each of them. And now it's ready to go. Okay, so remember oiling the valves, something like once a week, once every other week, or something like this. If we're being realistic with your young students, if they're not getting to it that frequently, the horn is not going to fall apart. So try not to stress out a lot about it. I will remind them to be oiling the valves, but at the very beginning, they're going to need help. And even when you all try at home, there's going to be instances where the valves are not oriented properly, and they're going to have to get me to take a quick look at it. It's not broken. It's a 2-second fix. I can do it for you. Once you become experienced with it, it's really quite easy. But just there's going to be mistakes along the way. I still get my valves in there backwards every once in a while, and it's just kind of one of the natures of the beast of what we're doing playing the trumpet here. Okay, so that's what we would call the shortest term maintenance that you need to do on the trumpet. You don't need to do anything more frequently than oiling the valves, but there is more. Okay, now let's talk about greasing the slides, another big long-term maintenance thing that you are going to have to make sure that you do when you own any brass instrument. Each one of these parts of the instrument that comes in and out is called a slide, and they all need to be greased. We have the same situation as the valves, where it's metal on metal, and it's eventually going to corrode and create rust. That's just how it works. You can't make, even the best metals on earth are always rusting all the time. It just goes slow enough that we can't see it for a really, really, really long time. And we can use stuff to protect it. This particular form of grease is a little less common. I went ahead and splurged on a nicer type of grease for my trumpet, and also a type that I can dispense without having to get my fingers all gooped up. You're often going to have received a little tub that's full of it. You'd take the cap off and you got to kind of pull it out with your finger and spread it on with your finger. Be aware that when you have that kind, you're going to want to make sure that you have a rag handy to wipe your fingers off, and you're going to want to be prepared to go quickly wash your hands, because that grease, you don't want to get it on anything else other than the trumpet itself. If you have this kind, you can get away with not using your fingers for the process, but it's going to be the same basic thing no matter what. You pull the slide out. If you end up pulling it out all the way, that's not a problem. You haven't broken the instrument. Don't worry about it. Just get it carefully threaded back into place. Usually I like to take it out, most of the way or halfway or something, and I'm just going to dab a few dots of grease around this trumpet slide like this. If you have it on your finger, you can just spread it around evenly, because what we're going to do with this right here is we're going to move it in all the way and out and in and out, and by doing this motion it spreads the grease evenly across the entire slide. I'm even going to take it all the way out one time and then carefully get it back into place like this, and then the trumpet is designed to have about this much left over. All of the rest of the slides function the same way. On my trumpet, I have to take this guard off so that my third valve slide can come out, but it's the same basic process. I'm going to dab some grease on this, set it aside safely, and very carefully expose this other part of the third valve slide to dab some grease onto, and then carefully get my third valve slide replaced into position. If your trumpet is designed with a guard to stop this from coming off, it may be designed somewhat differently. Another very common type of guard that you're going to encounter is a screw-based guard. This screw down here on the bottom, when it's all the way tightened, sticks up over here and gets in the way of this little notch on the trumpet as I try to open the third valve. It's a stopper for that notch. You can see how they collide with one another like that. So you might need to back this screw out in order to get your slide off. There may be other types of plastic guards that are kind of wedged into the third valve slide like this. If you're unsure about how to do this, about how to get yours removed so that you can put the grease on, just have your student ask me in class. What we're doing right now is not urgent work. It shouldn't need to happen at the very beginning, and it shouldn't need to happen for a month or so. When these slides, it becomes very obvious. You can feel them sticking when you try to move them, and that's when you want to get the grease on. The first valve slide comes off the same. Dab a couple pieces, a little bit of grease, dab a little bit of grease. I'm going to try to get around the back side here too, so that it's easier to evenly distribute around the slide. This second valve slide right here can sometimes be quite a nuisance to get out of the horn. In order to get it out of the horn, I'm going to pull on this knob right here, and it's being just a little bit stubborn. I'm sure I could pry it out, but I want to show you the extra way to get it out just in case yours is being stubborn as well. What you want to do is take a cleaning rag, and you want to feed the cleaning rag gently through the valve like this. And then when you're pulling on the valve, it's going to give pressure exactly in the right direction to pull the slide out. Go ahead and close the cloth completely in your hand so that when this comes off, it doesn't become a projectile. We don't want to slingshot it across the room, so it's great to go ahead and cover this up and make sure that once it comes off, it's going to be stuck in the rag. Now I'm going to pick the horn up in one hand and pull with the other like this to get that slide out. It's okay to apply a significant amount of pressure, but once you get to the point that you're in doubt and you feel like, I probably shouldn't pull on this any harder, then stop. It's okay to just stop and bring it into a store to let them use their special tools and techniques to do it. They're a little bit more experienced with it. They know exactly how much pressure can be put on it, and you can ask for my help in school as well. This slide in particular can be really difficult. The rest of them you should be able to get off and greased up on your own. Now it is extremely handy to have a cleaning rag at your disposal so that you can wipe up the extra grease. You can wipe off your hands a little bit. I would again recommend doing this when you know that you're going to be able to run over to the sink and wash your hands up afterwards anyways, because this grease, if it gets on clothes, it can stain it. Remember, the frequency that you need to be putting grease on the slides of the instrument is something like maybe once a month, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more than that. It's hard to tell exactly. Once these get dry and stiff, it should become pretty obvious that they're not moving properly and that they need to have a little bit of grease added to them. I check in school. I go around to trumpets and wiggle slides and see if they need to add grease to them. And oftentimes the first time I'll just do it for the students really quickly in class, but it's something that you as trumpet owners need to maintain on your own. It's going to be your responsibility to make sure that it doesn't get all dried out and hardened up and rusted into place. Now, the last piece of advice that I'm going to give to brass players about long-term maintenance is that you're going to need to give your instrument a bath. I'm going to do a whole separate video for that on how to give the trumpet a bath. You have to really take it kind of all the way apart. It's not that arduous of a process, and it's not something that you need to be doing super frequently. By the end of the school year, it'll be a good idea to do so that we can get all the gunk that's built up in the horn over the course of the year out of it. But until that point, I don't think it'll be necessary for you to do it, and so we'll walk you through it a little bit later in the school year in a separate video. All right, well, that concludes my trumpet tutorial. Thanks so much for hanging out for the whole thing. Please don't hesitate if you have any additional questions or if you have any feedback about things that I should have included in this video. Thanks again for your time, and we'll see you in class.